Dear learners, welcome to this session. This lecture is part of the Unit 4, Encounter with Colonialism and Poverty. This lecture is part of the program MA in Gandhi and Peace Studies. The course, this unit or this lecture is part of the course MGPE 006, Gandhi's Economic Thought. Welcome to this session. I am Dr. G. Uma, working as an assistant professor in the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Today, in the previous lecture, we discussed about the Gandhi's encounter with colonialism in South Africa. In this lecture, in continuation of our previous lecture, this lecture, we will look into the Gandhi's encounter or experience with colonialism in India. Welcome to this session. After listening to this lecture, you would be able to understand the Gandhi's experience with the colonialism in India, how this experience has shaped his thought about economics of this country, that is India. Gandhi first realized the ground level economic impact of colonial India when he visited Champaran. I gave a detailed lecture on this, on his visit to Champaran in my previous lectures too. He had direct experience of it when in South Africa. He came back to India in 1915 after achieving remarkable success in Satyagraha against the mighty British. It is not that Gandhi was unaware about India's condition, but close encounters such as the ones he had experienced in South Africa were yet to happen in India. We should remind our learners and our listeners and readers that we have already narrated about Nauroji and Dutt's account of India's economic exploitation and destruction of skills and skilled workers in the country. We have also noted that Gandhi was deeply moved by these accounts, especially the one rendered by Dutt. The Champaran story of exploitation was more severe, and this he learnt when he came back to India from South Africa and joined India's struggle for freedom. D.G. Tendulkar, who had also written a very good biography of Gandhi, has in his another book, Gandhi in Champaran, we have taken the reference from 2005 edition, begins with the words that captures the heart of the situation. Quote, "The tale of Indian riots forced to plant indigo by the British planters forms one of the blackest chapters in the annals of colonial exploitation. Not a chest of indigo reached England without being stained with human blood," unquote, said Mr. E. D. Latour of the Bengal Civil Service, who was magistrate of Faridpur in 1848. Giving evidence before the inquiry committee, he revealed, quote, "I have seen several riots sent unto me as a magistrate who have been speared through the body. I have had riots before me who had been shot down by Mr. Ford, a planter. I have put on record how others have been first speared and then kidnapped, and such a system of carrying indigo I considered a system of bloodshed," unquote. Indigo, known as Neil in most Indian languages, is an Indian native product discovered by the British for their use in textile industry. The East India Company in 1600, when it was yet to exercise political power in India as a colonizer, had already traded in indigo, and it was a major item giving them huge profit. The first revolt against the company and later against the British Raj happened in Bengal in the beginning of the 19th century, and a special commission was appointed to look into the indigo farmers of Bengal. Tendulkar has given a very detailed account, and it is recommended to read this account of how economic exploitation of the colonized was organized and carried out with the sympathy of the administrators. The indigo cultivation had moved to parts of Bihar that was under the Bengal province during the British administration towards the end of the 18th century. The system was exploitative from the beginning. In about 100 years, Champaran had ranked first in indigo cultivation among other areas in Bihar. Tendulkar notes, quote, "The cultivation of indigo was more extensive in Champaran than in any other districts of Bihar. According to the survey of 1892 to 97, no less than 21 factories with 48 outworks employing 33,000 laborers had been established in the district, while the area under indigo cultivation was 95,970 acres or about 7% of the cultivated area." Unquote. This was taken from the page number 16 written by Tendulkar. The artificial dye appeared in Europe in 1900 and this led a depression of indigo prices. It also led to extreme exploitation of indigo farmers. The main problem was that the indigo farmers were not free to grow anything else if they felt that indigo did not yield remunerative price to them. In the liberal and free situation, farmers can also respond to price signals and decide to grow or not to grow particular crop. In the colonized period, the British planters not only forced the farmers to grow indigo, but also forced them to accept lower prices and tax the land heavily. It should be admitted that the British administration had made efforts to understand the systems and intervene in the process. This was because the British had always claimed that justice was for everyone. They also worked towards smooth revenue administration. The indigo problem had also become intertwined with the land revenue administration issues. The land ownership and tenure system also was exploitative. The combined result of this was that the tenants suffered the most. The issues were then referred to Settlement Commissioner. Here we end this discussion by highlighting critical observations contained in the report of the Settlement Commissioner that indicate the consequences of colonization in the area. The report noted that an illegal chess abweb was collected by the planters and landowners. It was equal to the legal rent, and indigo farmers ended up paying twice the legal rent. There were 40 types of payments that made up the abwab. Tenants had to pay for the use of water from the canals. It was known as pain kharcha. This had to be paid even by those who did not get access to canal water, and a few cases even when there were no canals. Besides, the other abweb items include salami, tin katia, lagan, band baheri, betmat, babahi, puttai, etc. The last was the sort of death duty. There were other specific items collected by planters as part of abweb, such as marvach, when tenant's son got married, sahaura at the time of widow remarriage. On Hindu festival, the planters received davat puja, bahudi, dasahari, chat navami, so on so forth. When the planters had to buy an elephant, the tenants had to mobilize fund that was called Hatiyahi. If the planters built a new house or bought a car or a boat, the tenants had to mobilize Gorahi, Motarahi and Hawahi. When the planter fell ill, the tenants had to pay Gawahi. One can see that the system led to severe extortion. The Settlement Commissioner's report had come out in 1915, the year Gandhi came back to India from South Africa. One of the indigo farmers, Rajendra Shukla, who was courageous, made continuous representation in various political fora. He approached Gandhi in Lucknow Congress and requested him to take up the cause. Gandhi, with some reluctance, accepted it and then, as we know, championed it. In the process of Champaran Satyagraha, Gandhi once again encountered colonialism. This time it was in India. There was one more type of encounter that Gandhi had with the colonialism among Indians. This related to the mindset. According to Gandhi, the people in India had developed the mindset to get colonized. He described this in Hind Swaraj. He could clearly see that the Indians fighting for freedom and home rule did not have indigenous vision of what the country should be like and what should be the fundamentals of society building or reconstruction. Gandhi had found this out during his visit to India during 1896 and 1909 and his interaction with the Indian nationalists in England. In Hind Swaraj, he had interpreted the minds of those moderates or extremists and shown that everybody wanted British to go, but they wanted to emulate the same system. Here, relevant text from Hind Swaraj is quoted below. The reader asked, I have now learned what Congress had done to make India one nation. I would now like to know your vision on Swaraj. I fear that our interpretation is not the same as yours. The editor, for this question, his reply was, it is quite possible that we don't attach the same meaning to them. You and I and all Indians are impatient to obtain Swaraj, but we are certainly not decided as to what it is. To drive the English out of India is a thought heard from many mouths, but it does not seem that many have properly considered why it should be so. I must ask you a question. Do you think that it is necessary to drive away the English if we get all we want? Reader, next question. I should ask of them only one thing, that is, please leave our country. The editor, for that reply, why do you want to drive away the English? The reader, because the India has become impoverished by their government. They take away our money from year to year. We are kept in the state of slavery. They behave insolently towards us. For this, the editor replied, if they don't take our money away, become gentle and give us responsible post, would you still consider their presence to be harmful? For this, the reader, that question is useless. It is similar to the question whether there is any harm in associating with the tiger if he changes his nature. When the tiger changes his nature, Englishmen will change theirs. For the editor, you have drawn the picture well. In effect, it means this, that we want English rule without the Englishman. You want the tiger's nature but not the tiger. That is to say, you would make India English, and when it becomes English, it will be called not Hindustan but Englistan. This is not the Swaraj that I want. The text that follows contains elaboration of most of these points. Gandhi saw that even the educated Indians had taken to the Western thinking and they all wanted to modernize India. From them, home rule or Hind Swaraj was political freedom. They wanted to change the ruler. They did not have much of a problem with the set of rules for governance. This also implied that the Indians seeking freedom for heading for similar civilization. This, in Gandhi's opinion, was colonial mindset. He realized that the British had also colonized the minds of people. Gandhi rose to fight against political as well as socio-economic colonialism in India. Dear learners, we have discussed about the Gandhi's mindset from a reader and editor point of view. Here it is clearly we could able to understand that how the mindset of the Indians, educated Indians, like according to Gandhi, educated Indians mostly they have inherited the Western thinking, and they wanted to modernize India by looking at the Western nations. But for Gandhi's home rule or Hind Swaraj was totally different. According to Gandhi, for the educated Indians, home rule or Hind Swaraj was political freedom, and they want to modernize the country based on what they have experienced, they have seen the modernization in the Western nations. Here Gandhi little bit differ from the others' opinion. According to Gandhi, these educated Indians totally they got the colonial mindset, and through the Western educations, the Britishers also colonized the mindset of the people. So Gandhi wants to fight against this colonial mindset of the people, and he not only wants political freedom for the country, he wanted to bring the socio-economic changes in the country. For that, he studied the poverty in detail. When he travelled throughout the country from north to south, east to west, he experienced the poverty among people, and he tried to understand the poverty from the perspective of the people. For that only he proposed indigenous, like strengthening of the indigenous knowledge, supporting the indigenous industries, and he wants to address the issues of poverty from Indian perspective. But the educated Indians who have inherited the colonial mindset, they want to modernize the country, they wanted to modernize our industries, they want to bring the industrialization. But according to Gandhi, that won't give any solution to address the socio-economic conditions of the country. This is the very important thing about the Gandhi's economic thought. In the forthcoming lecture, certainly we will going to address, or we are going to learn Gandhi's encounter with poverty. Because of his encounter with poverty, how his economic thought has been built up in his mind. Unlike neoliberal economic policy, laissez-faire, or like modernization, his economic thought is totally different, and he tried to build the indigenous industries and indigenous knowledge and indigenous technology. Through them he wants to address the issues of poverty and other issues. Hope all of you enjoyed this lecture. After this lecture, in the forthcoming lecture, we will elaborately discuss about the Gandhi's encounter with poverty and how his experience has translated or built his own socio-economic thought in his mind. Accordingly, he tried to propose certain policy prescription to address the same. Thank you so much.